So when governments set ambitious targets, they evoke the spirit of enterprise and ambition, but ambition without preparation is like building a house on sand. And Sir Keir Starmer's pledge, Rachel Reeves' pledge, Angela Rayner's pledge to construct 1.5 million homes by 2029 is noble in its intention, but it's hobbled by the glaring oversight that the UK doesn't have enough construction workers to make it happen. It isn't just a hiccup in planning, it's a symptom of a wider trend of policy making on the hoof, policy making divorced from the reality of what's actually going on. The numbers tell the story. To meet the target of 300,000 homes a year, the sector needs an additional 250,000 workers, specifically 20,000 bricklayers, 8,000 carpenters, 3,200 plasterers, and the list goes on. These aren't trivial gaps. These are gaping chasms, holes in the system, and the current construction workforce of 2.67 million is already stretched thin, and a quarter of those workers are over 50, inching towards retirement. And meanwhile, only 10% of bricklayers are under 25. The pipeline isn't just narrow, it's dry. And then, not only are we going to be building 300,000 homes per year, we're going to be building prisons and other and other buildings. We're going to try and finish HS2. Compounding the problem is Brexit. And I'm sorry to keep coming back to Brexit. Eastern European workers once filled the void that is now manifestly screaming out. But tighter immigration controls have seen this pool dry up. Historically, half of London's construction workforce hailed from the EU, and today house builders describe visa sponsorship processes as complex, time-consuming and costly. And at what point does a bricklayer qualify as a skilled worker who can be brought into this country under the visa systems that we've got at the moment? And the government insists migration isn't the solution. Instead, it trumpets skills hubs and apprenticeships as the answer. Admirable, but these measures take years to bear fruit, and we need action now if we're going to have homes now. Apprenticeships are falling out of fashion in addition. Since 2011, apprenticeships have plummeted by a third, and the sharpest declines are among the 16 to 19-year-olds. Why? Because our education system prioritizes university over trade. And as one apprentice aptly puts it, in schools, you're pushed down the uni route. Yes, of course. And wrongly so. Even when young people do pursue construction apprenticeships, only 1 in 4 finds employment in the sector. This isn't a recruitment crisis. This is the failure of the system. I was talking to somebody the other day who isn't going to university, and instead he's being chivied along to try this, to try that. Why isn't he being encouraged to do an apprenticeship? Because it's simply not on the horizon of the people who are offering advice. The construction industry's inherent volatility exacerbates the problem. Most workers are self-employed, hired on a pay-by-the-day basis, which disincentivizes training and upskilling. And why invest in apprenticeships when the next project and paycheck is completely uncertain? The government's proposed fixes are riddled, therefore, with contradictions. Net migration. Starmer wants to slash migration while simultaneously filling a workforce gap that clearly requires it. It's a cognitive dissonance that only underscores the lack of a coherent plan. The so-called Skills England initiative remains a shadow organisation with no clear roadmap. Without proper devolution or employer incentives, it's destined to become another Quango. And construction isn't unique in its skills crisis. From IT to care work, industries across the board are suffering. Yet policymakers still cling to sound bites rather than real solutions. And failing to address this workforce shortage won't derail housing targets. It'll ripple through the economy. It's not just housing which is going to collapse. It's everything. Housing underpins economic growth. It's tied to infrastructure, public services, quality of life. But without workers to build those houses, homes won't be built, prices won't fall, the housing crisis will deepen. To build homes, we must rethink immigration. We must adopt flexible visa systems that respond to real-time labour market needs. We must recognise that what we need is not so much skilled workers as young workers who are going to pay the tax which will fund the pensioners and the older retiring workforce that depends on the tax being paid and on the economy leveraging into action. We need to prioritise trades alongside academic routes and revamp how schools present career options. We need to invigorate the school system. We need to change the school system so that we're not simply feeding people into primary school to come out the other end as if there's some sort of conveyor belt on a Smedley HP P factory system or a Ford Model T system where you put something in at one end, it comes out the other end on a conveyor belt as a university degree, and anything else is a failure. That's not education, that's absurdity. We need to commit to longer-term projects that shield the industry from political and economic volatility. We need to empower local governments and employers to address regional needs, rather than to have people in Westminster stamping their feet and saying, we need this, we need that. We need to recognise that we need change. And change starts in school. And we need to get rid of this old factory concept of a conveyor belt and you go in one and you come out of the other with a product. Instead, we need to equip children with the skills to adapt from one day and one idea to another. Because our future is about our adaptability. The promise of 1.5 million homes is tantalising, but it is just rhetoric. Promises alone don't lay bricks. Without a workforce, it's just another empty pledge. And the government must move beyond big ideas and big sound bites to practical solutions, or risk yet another headline-grabbing initiative collapsing under the weight of its own inadequacy and stupidity.